He doesn't save people, he punishes people. Think about that for a second. The world's greatest detective, the symbol of justice, a billionaire who swore vengeance on crime itself. And at his core, he needs people to hurt. Not because he's a villain, but because he's an 8-year-old boy in a dark alley who never got to stop screaming. Strip away the mythology, the cape, the car, the gadgets, and what you actually have is one of the most disturbing psychological portraits in all of fiction. Because Bruce Wayne is not okay. He never was. The night his parents died, something inside him sealed shut, not broke, sealed. He didn't fall apart. He organized, he trained, he built an entire existence around a single wound and called it a mission. That's not strength, that's a coping mechanism with a $10 billion budget. Every version of this story, every actor, every comic, every reboot across 85 years begins in the same place. Not Gotham, not Wayne Manor, a narrow alley, 2 gunshots, a child on his knees. And nothing that comes after ever escapes that moment. Bruce Wayne didn't conquer his trauma, he became it. The cape is a costume, the gadgets are tools, but the rage, the obsessive need to stand between innocence and violence night after night without rest, without healing, without end, that's not heroism. That's a wound that learned how to talk. And the reason we keep coming back, every reinvention, every new face under the mask, isn't because we want to see him win. It's because we recognize something in him. That part underneath the armor isn't Batman. It's a kid who needed someone to save him, who decided that if no one was coming, he'd become the someone for everyone else because he can't do it for himself. And that's exactly why the guilt gets quieter. The guilt is probably the part that does the most damage over time. We learn across different versions of this story that Bruce blames himself for his parents' deaths. That same decision, same request, same small thing he did or didn't do to put them in that alley that night. A child's brain can't process that correctly. It can't hold the actual scale of it. So it just holds on to it in the only way it knows how. It makes a rule. Never again. Never be that powerless again. And then it spends the rest of its life building something that enforces that rule. His guilt shows up in the way he frames his family's legacy. Not as wealth, not as a name, but as an obligation. You don't care about your family's legacy. What I'm doing is my family's legacy. That's not purpose. That's penance. The fear. This one's the most interesting because it's the one he works the hardest to hide. He built everything, the darkness, the voice, the whole image of the thing around the idea of controlling fear. If he can make other people afraid, maybe he doesn't have to feel it. Maybe he can take the thing that broke him and just aim it outward. But the Batman is not a solution to that fear. That's the key point. It's a container for it. A management strategy that looks like power from the outside and costs everything from the inside. And in the Batman, 2 years into this, he's already starting to sense it isn't working. He says it himself, "I wish I could say I'm making a difference, but I don't know." Now, here's the question that's been debated across 85 years of this character. Which one is the mask? Is Bruce Wayne the real person and Batman the disguise? For Superman, the answer's simple. Clark Kent is who he is. The cape is the performance. Spider-Man, same thing. Peter Parker is real, but Batman is different. Watch the 2022 film and pay attention to how Bruce moves without the suit. He can't make eye contact. He's somewhere else. Present enough to function, but not really there. And then watch him as Batman. Focused, relentless. He's most himself inside the armor. The suit isn't the disguise. Bruce Wayne is. The billionaire, the playboy. That's a tool he picks up when the mission needs it. And the only identity he's built any real investment in is the one wearing a mask.
I'm vengeance.
And this is the part that's easy to intellectualize and hard to actually sit with. Because what's being described here isn't a comic book promise, it's a survival strategy. You build a version of yourself that can function, that can go out into the world and handle things and not fall apart doing it. And the original version, the one that was there before, the one that got hurt, you don't kill it. You just put it somewhere quiet and stop checking on it. And after long enough, you forget what it wanted. Not what it's supposed to want, not what the work demands, what it actually wanted for itself. Bruce hasn't asked that question in years, maybe ever, because asking it means taking off every layer of protection he spent his entire life constructing. And underneath, all of it might just be the kid in the alley, still there, still waiting, still not understanding why. That's what the Rogues Gallery is really about. And this is the thing that separates Batman from every other mythology at this scale. No other hero's villains work this way. They're not random, they're not just obstacles. Every major Batman villain is a version of Bruce who went through something similar and came out on the other side wrong. The Joker is what happens when control collapses completely, when the thing holding everything together just snaps one day, and what's left is pure chaos.
Tough crazier than usual. Mommy gets the kitchen knife to defend herself. He doesn't like that. Not one bit.
Two-Face is what happens when you've been holding two versions of yourself in tension for too long and the seam finally gives. Scarecrow takes the fear and weaponizes it outward. Batman takes the same fear and builds a cage around it and calls that strength. Ra's al Ghul is the one that should terrify him most, because that's Bruce in 20 years if he crosses the line he keeps drawing for himself. A man who decided his methods were justified and simply stopped asking whether they were. And then there's the Riddler, Edward Nashton. And this one is different because it's not a cautionary tale about what Bruce could become. It's a mirror for what Bruce already did. An orphan, invisible his entire life. He looked at the same broken city, felt the same rage, built the same kind of identity out of it, and then looked across the darkness and saw Batman and thought, that's my partner. He thought they were the same. He thought vengeance was a shared language. And the horror of that scene, the genuine horror, is that he's not entirely wrong. Bruce put something into the world when he became Batman, a signal, an idea, and he doesn't get to fully control what that idea means to the people who receive it. He has to sit with that. The Riddler isn't just a villain he stopped, he's a consequence he created. And so the Rogues Gallery stops being a list of enemies and becomes something else entirely.
Won't be anymore, will I?
A cruel riddle I could not solve, suffocating my mind, no escape. But then today I saw it.
They'll remember me now.
It becomes a map. These are the different roads you take when something breaks you early and there's nobody there to help you put it back together. Some people go quiet, some go sideways, some flood a city. Batman drew a line, I won't kill. And that line is the only thing he can point to that makes him different from the people he fights, which is maybe exactly why he holds it so hard. It's not righteousness, it's not principle, not really. It's the one distinction he has left, because without it, he'd have to ask himself, seriously, honestly ask himself, what exactly he's been doing out there, and whether the answer after everything is actually better than what he set out to fight against. And that's a question he's absolutely not ready to answer. Because this is maybe the most psychologically honest pattern in all 85 years of this character. He keeps taking on sidekicks. He keeps losing them or pushing them away. He swears he won't do it again, and then he does. Dick Grayson kept him human. There was actual warmth there, the kind Bruce couldn't generate on his own. Then Dick grew up and left, and Bruce had to figure out who he was without that. Jason Todd came next, pushed him past every limit he'd set, and Jason's death broke something that never fully repaired. And then Tim Drake figured it out before anyone said it out loud. Batman needs Robin, not for tactical reasons. He needs one because without someone beside him, he stops being a person. He becomes something closer to a force of nature. He loses the thread that connects him to why any of this actually matters. Not the mission, but the people inside the mission. And he pushes every one of them away eventually, Because closeness means vulnerability, and vulnerability means the armor comes off. But then, because he has to, he reaches out again. Every time, the same pattern. 85 years and the pattern doesn't break. He's never been as alone as he tells himself he is. He just keeps working to stay that way. Because that's what people do when they got hurt young and didn't get what they needed. You build walls. You resent them, you build them higher anyway. Because at least a wall is something you can control. And control is the whole project. What does it actually cost? That's the real question underneath all of this. Look at Gotham. Crime keeps coming back. The Joker gets out. Nothing he does fixes it permanently. And he knows this. That's what makes it hard to watch, especially if you've ever been somewhere near this yourself. It's not dramatic. There's no breakdown, no crisis moment. It's just a quiet compulsion to keep doing the one thing you know, even when the evidence is right there that it isn't enough. That's what unresolved trauma looks like from the inside. You keep moving, because stopping means sitting with it. And sitting with it means feeling things you spent years keeping at a manageable distance. And you know this one. Maybe you've never called it trauma. Maybe you've never thought about defense mechanisms or a false self. But you know what it feels like to have a version of yourself you put on for the world. The one that's fine, the one that handles it, that doesn't need anything. And you know what happens when someone gets close enough to almost see what's underneath, how fast you move to shut it down. That's what Bruce does every time Alfred reaches for him. Every time Gordon tries to actually know him rather than just work with him. He allows the partnership. He keeps the person out. Because if you let the person in, they might see that underneath everything is just a kid who still doesn't understand why it happened. The Batman does something no prior live-action film had really done with this character. It asks who Batman is when his understanding of everything falls apart at once. His father wasn't the man he believed. The legacy wasn't clean. The renewal fund, the thing he'd built his entire mission on top of, was rotten from the inside. Everything he was fighting for was resting on ground he'd never actually checked. And in that moment of complete uncertainty, the only person left is Alfred, the man who raised him, the man he's kept at arm's length his entire adult life. And Alfred extends his hand, and Bruce takes it, not because he figured something out, not because he solved it, just because there's nothing left to hold on to. And sometimes that's the only way it happens. You don't run out of reasons to keep the wall up. You just run out of wall. Watch what happens after. He reaches towards Selina. He stops her from pulling that trigger, not with logic, not with a lecture, just with the simplest possible acknowledgement. You've paid enough. 4 words. It's the thing nobody ever said to him. And he says it to her because he can see it clearly from the outside. He's not quite ready to know it might be true for him too. That's how it usually works. The truth is always clearest when you're looking at someone else. Looking at yourself is the harder project. But the fact that he can say those words at all, that's the beginning. Not the end, just the beginning. So here's the real arc. Not defeating the Riddler, not saving Gotham. The arc is whether Bruce Wayne can learn to extend towards himself the same thing he keeps reaching toward everyone else. Whether he can accept a caring hand instead of stepping back from it. Whether he can believe the anger and the guilt and the fear are real, they're his, and he's allowed to feel them without having to punish his way through them. The mask was never strength. It was the only language he had for a long time. And the slow, hard, imperfect work of his character across every version, every decade, every new face under the cowl is learning that there might be another language worth trying. The ending of The Batman is quiet. The city is flooded. Selina leaves. Bruce watches her through the rearview mirror until she's gone and then drives back toward Gotham. Nothing is resolved. He's not healed, but he's not the same man who said, "I am vengeance" at the beginning either. He went into the water, he came down from on top and waded into the pain alongside the people suffering, and he reached out his hand. And the boy who lost his father took it. And maybe that's the only place anything ever really begins. Not with certainty, not with answers, but with one scared person reaching toward another in the dark and deciding, despite everything, to. A boy watches his parents die. That's where it starts. Not with the cape, not with the cowl, not with the gadgets or the cave or any of it. With a child standing in an alley in the dark, completely powerless and completely alone. Every version of this story, every film, every comic, every actor who has ever put on that suit begins exactly there. And what makes Batman one of the most psychologically compelling characters ever created is not that he overcame that trauma, it's that he didn't. He just found a way to carry it, to wear it, to build a whole identity around it, and call the identity a hero. And the reason this character has endured for 85 years across every reboot and retelling and new actor in the suit is because that part, the part underneath the armor, is something a lot of people recognize. Here's the thing about Bruce Wayne. He didn't become Batman despite losing his parents. He became Batman because of it, because of three specific emotions that formed inside him that night and never fully left: anger, guilt, fear. Those aren't just character traits someone assigned him. They're the architecture of everything he does. The anger is the most visible part. Watch him fight in any version of this, but especially in the Batman, where Matt Reeves puts you right inside of it. He's not just stopping people, he's punishing them. There's a brutality that goes past what the situation requires, past what stopping someone actually needs. He wants them to hurt. He needs them to hurt. Because on some level, that's the only way to externalize what's been sitting inside him since he was 8 years old standing in that alley.